Hi, I'm McCallum and today I'm here with the Cajon. Now this is one of my favourite drums. It's so fun to play and it's extremely versatile. Now this video is all about just sharing some of my enthusiasm for the Cajon, and we're going to get you going with some basic grooves, but first we'll just have a look at how it sounds and then we'll get into the basics. Now the first thing that we need to do is get comfortable at the Cajon. So when we sit, I want to make sure that my back is nice and straight and that my arms are relaxed and feeling kind of loose, ready to move. Now the hands, I set them up just up the top of the Cajon and the playing surface here. And the other thing that I like to do is lean back just slightly so that these rubber feet are just off the ground and I can reach more of the drum more easily. Now that we're comfortable on the Cajon, let's look at the different sounds that we can make. Now I like to keep things very simple. I just work with a simple bass and a snare. So let's start with the bass. We need to use most of the palm, but really focusing on the finger lengths. And what we do is we find the resonant low on the front plate here. Now when you do strike the drum, try not to deaden the sound too much by pushing in. Let the hand bounce off to let it resonate. Great, now let's look at the snare. So the snare, pretty similar thing, but we set up with the knuckles just about at the top of the Cajon and use basically just the fingers to get this sound. And they're the two sounds that we need to start playing some grooves on the Cajon. Okay, now the fundamental skill in building up grooves is sequencing those sounds together. And in music we're always talking about this in terms of patterns and beats and bars. So let's make a pattern in a bar of 4 beats. And we're going to have bass on 1, bass on 2, snare on 3, snare on 4. Bass, bass, snare, snare. So this pattern is really helpful developing those bass and snare sounds. You can really hear when one of them isn't quite keeping up because we're using both the right and left hands. So what we're going for here is a lot of consistency, and you'll be able to hear when you've got that. At the end of this, and after a bit of practice, you want each stroke sounding big and open. Now with all that together, let's learn a really popular groove that you'll find useful in all kinds of musical settings. It's called the basic rock beat. And the pattern for the basic rock beat is just bass on 1, snare on 2, bass on 3, snare on 4. Now as we repeat it, you start to hear that it flows quite nicely. And for starters, we'll be just doing this with the right hand, and then we'll bring in the left hand with its own special purpose in a minute. Now what I want to show you with the left hand is how to fill in the gaps between those bass and those snare strokes. Now this is a basic version of what we call the rhythm tree, and you can see that we've got quarter notes, eighth notes and sixteenths. Now in that basic rock beat that we played, our 1, 2, 3 and 4 that we counted, these are quarter notes. For every quarter note you can fit 2 eighth notes, for every eighth note you can fit 2 16th notes. So let's bring that left hand into that basic rock beat now. So what we need to do first is count the bar in eighth notes. So we've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And the left hand is playing those ands in between the bass and the snare. So let's have a listen to that now. Notice that with the left hand, I've been playing those strokes on the and notes a lot quieter. Now these are ghost notes. What they are is a quiet way to add to the feel or fill in the space in the groove. Now we keep them quiet enough to maintain the main pulse, which is that bass, snare, bass, snare. Use them all the time just because of this, and I think they sound great. Now if we take that one step further, what we can do is play with 16th notes. So again, we recount the bar, this time as 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So you can hear that we've got 4 subdivisions to each beat. Now again, the bass and the snare is just on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and then using those ghost notes, we're going to fill in the other 16ths. Let's have a listen to how that sounds. In a lot of the grooves that I play on the Cajon, I make big use of those 16th notes. Basically, I like the way that it feels to have that constant motion, playing each 16th note as it comes up. Other than that, you can really accommodate more complex rhythms more easily, because if you have an 8th or a 16th note variation on either the bass or the snare, it fits in with the motion that you've already created. Okay, so the next groove that I want to show you is a variation on that basic rock beat that we've already learned. Now, the variation comes in as another bass note, and it's played on the and of 2. Now, to show you what I mean, I'll count out the bar, and I'll play it at the same time, so you get an idea. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. Let's make things a bit more interesting. I've got one more variation to show you where the bass lands on a 16th, the of 3. Now on top of that, the snare lands on the 2 and the 4 as usual. Now as we get into it, I'll count out each beat and I'll play along. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1, 2, 3, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1. So once you've got that together, you can start to make your own variations. All you have to do is count out the bars as that 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, and then you find different spots on that timeline where you can put in different bass and snare strokes. It gives you a lot of groove potential. Now, here's a few more variations that I've come up with. Let's have a listen to those. Now I'm sure we could have a lot of fun just playing grooves, but sometimes we have to stitch them together. Now, a lot of the music that we listen to has different sections with different grooves, and a lot of the time we need some way of bridging that gap between groove A and groove B. So what that might be is a fill of 16 snare strokes, just something that fits between those but is different enough to create an easy transition. Now I'll show you what I mean with just a little exercise that I've come up with. We're just going to play a few bars of groove A, and then our fill, and then groove B. Let's have a listen. now let's try a fill with a bit more variation. I'm going to use all those 16th notes to my advantage here, and I've come up with a pattern. Okay, let's have a listen to how that's going to sound. Not every fill should cover the whole bar. A lot of the time I just use a 2-beat fill. So what that means is starting on beat 3 of the bar and filling all the way to beat 1 of the next bar. I'll show you how that sounds. These are great when you don't need your fill to be big and dramatic. A lot of the time it's all about letting the feel of the playing breathe for just long enough so that when you come back to the groove comfortably. Now that we've been through the basics of playing some grooves and some fills on the cajon, I want to share with you a few more ideas. This one's called the foot slide technique, and what it allows you to do is change the pitch of the cajon as you play it. And to do it, all you have to do is bring one of your feet onto the playing surface and then slide with your heel up and down while playing. Something else that really brings the cajon alive for me is this technique called the finger roll. And all there is to it really is just alternating different strokes using 2 fingers on each hand. I'll show you how that works. Now, I mentioned earlier how versatile the cajon is. Let's see what happens when I attach a pedal. Now, one of the greatest things about having this bass pedal is that I can create a constant pulse and then have the freedom to use my hands to create interesting rhythms on top of that. Let's see how it sounds. There's just so much potential with the cajon. You've seen how versatile it is, it's a lot of fun to play, and this video has just been about the basics, but enough to get you started with your band, and soon you'll be in the studio, on stage, and having a lot of fun. Now, when you do sit down to practice, even if you are an absolute beginner, just keep in mind that everything's going to start out really slow. Every groove's going to start out really calculated, getting each hit right. But then just keep in mind that with all the practice that you do, that's going to turn into something really great. Now, if you do have any questions on YouTube, just post them in that comment section and I'll be around replying to them as much as I can. Thanks for watching my groove guide. I hope you've got a lot out of it. I'll see you on the next video.